This tutorial will be useful to you if you're new to hosting Zoom meetings. We'll be having a look at the different controls and settings that you can use to manage your meetings more effectively. As the host or the person running the meeting, you'll also have access to a few additional controls, and we'll have a look at these too. You'll get more out of this video if you're familiar with the basic controls, and we cover that in tutorial 3. There are 3 ways to start your meeting. In this tutorial, we're going to do this from the meetings page on the website, but you can also start your meeting from the desktop app or from a mobile device. It's a good idea to start your meeting a little bit earlier than the scheduled time. This just gives you an opportunity to make sure that you're comfortable with all the settings. Also, some of your members might arrive early, especially if they're new to Zoom, and you may be able to help them out if they're having any issues. I've signed into my account on the website and I'm now on the meetings page. I just need to find my meeting and I can see it just here. I've set up a test meeting for this tutorial. Over to the right, you'll see that I've got a start button and I can start my meeting from here. Once I've clicked on the start button, I'll get a message asking me to open Zoom meetings. And you'll see that just here. All I need to do is to click this button and Zoom meetings will open. Depending on your settings, you may be asked to join with video and you may be asked to join with computer audio. So you just need to go ahead and do that. And then you'll be taken straight into your meeting. I'm now in my meeting. I'm assuming that you'll already be familiar with some of the basic controls and settings in a Zoom room, so we'll be focusing on the ones that you'll find most useful for managing your meetings. We'll look at the controls at the top left-hand side of the screen and also the main controls at the bottom of the screen. If you don't see these immediately, just hover over this area and the controls will appear. Let's look at the first of these controls. That's represented by an eye in a little circle. If you click on this, it'll give you all the details of your meeting. So you'll have the ID, the password and the link. It's useful to know that this is here just in case you're contacted during the meeting by somebody who's asking for these details. The second control over here will open up your settings window. When you set up your meeting, you'll have already taken care of all your settings, so you shouldn't need to make any changes during your meeting. If you do, you just need to open up this window and you can make the changes from here. You'll find your security settings in the control bar at the bottom of the screen. That's just here. If you click on this, you'll be provided with a range of options and I'll just run through these with you. Lock meeting. If you check this, you effectively close the doors to your meeting and no one else will be able to join. We would strongly advise that you leave this unchecked. Some of your members may only be able to attend part way through the meeting and you should give them the opportunity to do this. Enable waiting room should already be checked. If it isn't, please check it as it's an important security feature. We've covered this in tutorial 3. In the next section, there are a number of options to control what your members or participants can do. So let's have a look at these. If you're expecting to ask your members to share something on their computers with you, you can allow them to share their screen. For example, they might want to give a presentation or show some photographs or videos to other people in the meeting. You can also leave this unchecked until you need it. Chat allows your members to use the chat box to send messages. Keep this checked. It's important to provide this option for communicating with the group or privately with other members. During a presentation, to avoid interrupting the speaker, members could be invited to type questions into the chat box. Please remind your members to be polite and comply with WI policy when they're using the chat box. You should also allow members to rename themselves. This just means that they can change the name that appears on their video box. Finally, you should allow members to turn their microphones on. If you've muted everyone during a presentation, they can then turn their microphones on again themselves. Next to the security icon, you'll see the control for the participants panel. That's just here. When you click on it, it'll open up the panel to give you details of everyone who's in the meeting. This little number here just indicates to you how many people are currently in the meeting. So let's go ahead and open that panel. So I'll just click on that. The panel will appear usually to the right of your screen. As a host, you should have this panel open throughout the meeting. This is where you'll get notifications that people are waiting to join the meeting, and you can also see if anyone's got their hands up. Your name will appear at the top of the list. Below your name, you'll see a list of everyone else in the meeting, and this will be in alphabetical order. With the participants panel open, I can see that Rachel is waiting to join the meeting. If I hover over her name, I can choose to admit her to the meeting or to remove her. You'll need to choose admit to let members into the meeting. If there was a name here that I didn't recognise, I could remove them. Be aware though that members might join from devices or accounts that belong to friends or family members, and so you might not immediately recognise the name. If you're not sure, you can admit them and double check. Then, if you do need to remove them, you'll be able to do this using the options next to their name. I'm expecting Rachel, so I'll just admit her into the meeting. I can see Rachel's name has appeared in her video box, which tells me that she's now in the meeting. If I look back at the participants panel, I'll see her name listed just below mine. If I hover over anyone's name, I'll be given a set of options which are specific to that person. So the first thing I can do is to mute that person, and that means I'll be turning their microphone off. You might want to do this if someone has moved away from their computer and there is a lot of background noise. I can click on the More button for a few more options. So let's go through these. If I click on the chat option next to somebody's name, it means I can send them a chat message privately. That means it will go only to them. Rachel's got her video off at the moment, but if it was on, I would be able to turn off her video from here. Then if I wanted to ask her to turn her video back on again, I could send her a message to ask her to do that. You probably won't need to use this because we like giving our members the option to turn their videos on and off as they see fit. Below this, you'll see that I can make Rachel a host or a co-host. So let's start with host. If you do make someone else a host, you will lose all your host controls. To get your hosting controls back again, that person will need to assign the hosting back to you. Instead, you might assign somebody as a co-host if you need help with the hosting. Your co-host will be able to share their screen even if you've turned off the screen share option for everyone else. If you have a speaker who's giving a presentation and that presentation involves showing something on their computer, it's worth making them a co-host so that they can share their screen with everyone. The next option would allow Rachel to record the meeting from her computer. We strongly suggest that you don't allow this. For WI meetings, you should be the only person recording the meeting, as it's your responsibility to ensure that there are no objections to you doing this. You can see here that I can assign Rachel to type any captions for me. For a WI meeting, you won't need to use this. It involves asking somebody to type what everybody's saying so that they appear as captions on the screen. This is quite a specialist and involved process, so you wouldn't really want to ask any of your members to do this. You can also rename somebody, and that refers to the name that appears in their video box. So you can see that Rachel's name appears here in the middle of her video box because she's got her video turned off. So if she had her video turned on, her name would appear in the bottom left-hand corner of her video box. So if I click on this, you'll see that the box will come up and I can enter a new screen name for Rachel. I'm just going to click cancel here. The next option allows me to put Rachel back in the waiting room. But this is really not good practice unless you've got a very good reason for doing this. Finally, I mentioned earlier that you can remove people if you've let them into the room and then realise that they shouldn't be here. You can do this from here. So if I wanted to remove Rachel, I could just click on this option here. At the bottom of the participants panel, you'll see a menu of actions. These are self-explanatory and they'll also be available to all your members. If you click the More icon here, you'll be given a few more options. As an example, you might ask all your members a question, and you could ask them to click on the yes or no buttons here to indicate whether they agree or disagree. Your members will have an additional icon here, and that's the raise hand icon. Typically, your members might use this to indicate that they want to contribute something to the conversation. The raised hand icon will appear next to their name. So you can see here that Rachel has her hand raised, and I can then try and bring her into the conversation. It's worth keeping an eye on this panel so that you notice when people have their hands up. If we go back to the bottom of the panel, you'll see that there's a clear all option. If you have a lot of icons that refer to something that's gone previously, you'll be able to clear them all yourself. So if I click on this, it will clear that hand. Right at the bottom of the panel, you have 3 more options. The first of these is invite. For a WI meeting, you probably won't need to use this because you've already invited everybody that needs to be invited. If you do use this button, it just opens up your email so you can email somebody to ask them to attend the meeting. The mute all button here allows you to turn everybody's microphone off. So you might do this if the speaker is about to start their presentation, but do let members know what you're doing. Once your speaker's finished, you might need to ask your members to unmute themselves if they want to say something. Finally, you'll see a little icon here with 3 dots in it. If I click on this, it gives me a few more options which apply to everybody in the meeting. Again, these are self-explanatory, and we've come across some of these in the security settings. So the first one asks everybody to unmute themselves. So if you have turned everybody's microphone off in one go, you'll be able to send them a message asking them all to turn their microphones back on again. So the mute participants upon entry, that would just make sure that everybody's microphones are turned off when they join the meeting. And as we've discussed before, you don't really want to do this because we want to give members the option of turning their microphones on and off as they see fit. We've already covered allow participants to unmute themselves and also to rename themselves. The next option is very useful, and as it says, it'll play a sound when somebody joins or leaves the meeting, and that's quite a good alert for you. We've already covered enable waiting room, and as we said before, make sure that that's checked. And we've also covered locked meeting, so just make sure that's unchecked. If I don't have the participants panel open, a message will appear just above the participants icon to tell me that there are people in the waiting room. If I click on see waiting room, it will open the participants panel so that I can see who's in the waiting room. It's worth having a quick recap on the chat box. You can open your chat box using the options at the bottom of the screen. So if I click on this here, you'll see that the chat box appears usually to the right hand side of your screen. This will work in exactly the same way for you as it does for your members, and we've covered this in tutorial 3. What is important is that you leave the chat box open so that you can keep a check on any messages that are coming in, and you'll be able to respond to them as soon as you can. Your co-host, if you have one, might also have this responsibility. You do have some additional control to manage the chat. In the bottom right hand side of the chat box, you'll notice 3 dots. If you click on this, you can determine who can speak to who. So as you can see here, you can allow participants to not chat to anybody, to chat only to the host, or to chat to everybody else in the room, or privately to another person. We would recommend that you have this final option checked. I'm just going to type a message in my chat box. I'm just going to say hello to everybody, just to show you one more option. So if I go back to the 3 dots and I click this, you'll now see that I'm able to save the chat. So if you've got a lot of valuable comments in the chat box, you are able to save that, and that will save onto your computer. This is a useful option if you want to record the outputs from the meeting. So if I click this, you'll see that the chat has been saved, and I can open the folder where they're kept. These will just be straightforward text files. When your meeting's over, you'll be able to end the meeting using the end button at the bottom right hand corner of your screen. So I just click on this, you'll see 2 options. We'll start with the second one, and that is leave meeting. You can use this if for some reason you need to leave the meeting but you'd like it to continue without you. If you do this, you must remember to assign the hosting role to somebody else in the meeting. This is likely to be your co-host if you have one. The end meeting for all button will end the meeting for everyone. If you are ending your meeting in this way, do let your members know what you're doing. You should now feel more confident about hosting a Zoom meeting. If you can, do find somebody who can come along to help you out on the day. And just a final word, it might be worth setting up a test meeting so that you can go into the Zoom room and explore the different settings and controls. This will help you to improve your confidence prior to any meetings.